All right, we can do this. Joe Biden is the most successful president of my lifetime. I believe that he can win in November. I believe he is going to win in November. I know he's going to win in November. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm worried this morning that history will be much kinder to our president than the voters might be come Election Day. At the very end of this show, I will offer my solution if the polling craters so badly that Joe Biden has to do the unthinkable and leave the ticket. I don't think we're there, and I don't think we'll ever get there. But if we get there, and again, we're not going to get there, but if Joe Biden has to leave the ticket, then he needs to resign the presidency as well. And Vice President Harris must become president so she can run and defeat Trump as the incumbent. Forget talk about an open convention. That will leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Joe needs to force Vice President Harris on the Democratic Party by resigning. But we're not there, and we're never going to be there. But to those of you who say Biden has to be removed from the ticket, when you come for the king, you better be prepared. And that means removing him from the Oval Office, because whether we like it or not, if he goes, Vice President Harris will be the nominee, whether you like it or not. And a lot of people are not going to like that. So she needs to run as an incumbent. I have zero faith in this Democratic Party. Jim Clyburn, who pretty much gave us Joe Biden, he's now suggesting that if Joe goes, the Democrats should hold a mini primary before the August convention. That is complete garbage. I have zero faith that this Democratic Party could hold a mini primary or stage an open convention and then miraculously rally behind the nominee. Again, Joe isn't leaving. And it makes me really angry that we're having this conversation. But if he leaves the ticket, then he has to leave the White House. And that means crowning Vice President Harris before the convention. Again, before this nonsense about a mini primary or an open convention, you better think this out. Because if you think the answer is Joe Biden stepping away, he's got to step away completely. I'll have more on this later on in the show. I can't say I'm not pissed off about this. New post-debate polling is about to be coming in tonight and tomorrow, and my gut tells me it won't be that bad for Joe Biden. And I already know that Biden is looking at polling right now that shows him still competitive in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, which, as you know, is all he has to win in order to get to 270. This is my security blanket. See, he loses. I'm giving him Nevada, giving Trump Nevada, Arizona. I'm giving him North Carolina, Georgia. All Joe has to do is carry Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and he wins. Now, the polling he's looking at this morning shows him still strong in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. He's also looking at the ad buys and his get out the vote machinery in those three states. In 2016, Hillary lost all three of those states by inches. Biden is looking at good numbers here. Why should he quit? I know this is a sad time for all of us. It's sad to see an 81-year-old man struggle. It's sad to see him watch as his son falls victim to a political witch hunt and possibly face prison time. Joe Biden has been watching his son tortured by the Republicans, and I'm sure he's worried about Hunter suffering a relapse. Joe Biden wouldn't be human if he weren't a little bit depressed. I'm depressed watching what he's going through. He's a good man. He is. He didn't tell Putin to invade Ukraine. He didn't tell Hamas to attack Israel. He warned Netanyahu not to go into Gaza. He also told Netanyahu to take the win after Israel knocked all those Iranian drones out of the sky. Biden told Netanyahu, if you start bombing Iran, you're on your own. He's a good man. Could you debate Trump? Could anybody? How do you debate lies? Where was CNN? CNN now says it was Joe Biden's job to correct Trump's lies. Well, why don't you have Joe Biden read the news at 9 p.m. then? Campaigns have their good days and their bad days. You've got to trust me on this. Thursday's debate was not a knockout punch. Presidential elections don't start until after Labor Day. This is, as they say, a hiccup. I know that instead of climate change, income inequality, and the healthcare crisis, it's far easier to discuss the horse race. That debate was a disgrace. CNN is a disgrace. And everyone talking about Joe's performance during that debate is a disgrace, including me. But this is the season where pundits and Democratic strategists earn their salary. A disastrous debate performance is raw meat for these opportunistic hacks. It's much more fun, more bombastic, more portentous to say Biden needs to step aside. Because it's boring when your hot take is, he had a bad night. It's boring to say a campaign doesn't come down to one bad debate. If it did, George W. Bush would have lost in 2004 after he literally pulled a Mitch McConnell and froze for 30 seconds during his debate with Democrat John Kerry. Do you remember that? Bush was running for re-election, and during the debate, he just stared blankly into the camera for 30 seconds. And then, on Election Day 2004, when the pollsters got it completely wrong, they told us John Kerry was going to beat Bush. And when you ask these pollsters why did George W. Bush lose today, they all said because he froze up during the debate with John Kerry. They said a commander-in-chief can't freeze for 30 seconds in the middle of a nationally televised debate. Turns out you can. George W. Bush got reelected. The people who were going to vote for George W. Bush were going to vote for him anyway, whether he froze or not. They said he's tired. He's waging an illegal war in Iraq. Of course he froze up. It's exhausting being a war criminal. And nobody, not a single Republican after that debate, that debacle, nobody said George W. Bush needs to step down. No Republican said, he froze up. He got us into an illegal war. He allowed 9/11 to happen. He should step down. Now, the Republicans stood by George W. Bush, and he got reelected. Presidents have bad debate performances. Obama lost the first debate to Mitt Romney in 2012 because incumbent presidents are not used to being challenged. They don't do well on their first debates. More importantly, however, nobody could survive the unchecked lies spewed by this monstrosity, Donald Trump. It's depressing. It's depressing that nobody's mad at Trump. Nobody's mad at CNN. It's depressing that Trump and CNN have coarsened political discourse the way they are, and everybody's taking it out on Joe Biden. At least the Democrats seem to be. I know people are terrified. I know people are terrified that Donald Trump will win. And it shouldn't be this hard. Something is seriously wrong with the United States of America when a twice impeached, convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist who tried to overthrow the government, even has a shot at getting back inside the Oval Office. He killed 1 million Americans when he crapped the bed on COVID. Something is seriously wrong with this country if it's even imaginable that he can return to the Oval Office. I feel powerless this morning. Watching Trump come this close to the Oval Office again, it makes me question everything I believe about this country, the people in charge, and the American voter. Anyone who has a shred of human decency is appalled by how Biden was treated during the debate and after. I understand it. Psychologically, the only way some of you can feel you're in control is by panicking and casting blame. Panic is the illusion that you're doing something. Casting blame at your own is the illusion that you're being proactive. But you don't panic over one bad debate performance. I was reading the other night about D-Day. The first wave of allies, soldiers storming the beach, walked into a crossfire that was nothing short of a meat grinder. General Eisenhower was just throwing bodies at the Germans that day. It was a disaster. And had D-Day been covered by today's media, viewed by today's American citizen, D-Day would have been stopped before it ever began, and Eisenhower would have been put before a military tribunal. Fighting fascism is never easy. You lose a lot of battles on your way to Berlin. We knew this election was never going to be easy. They never are. So instead of going after Trump and CNN with everything we've got, some of the Democrats do what they do best, and that is cannibalize their own. The media, the strategists, the pundits, they are creating anxiety, because creating anxiety makes them feel powerful and relevant. It makes them think they have some sort of control. But knocking Biden just looks like you're doing something. You're not. It's the height of cowardice to kick a man when he's down. I know we should stop talking about the debate and the polls and the headlines. I know we need to lower our heads and remain focused on exposing the sudden lurch towards fascism, not just inside the Republican Party, but also right now in our country. Joe Biden is not stepping down. Cognitive decline or no cognitive decline, he's staying put, I think. This is the mop-up for July 4th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me today. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed, and hit the notifications bell so you'll always catch a new episode. If you would like a transcript of today's episode and previous episodes, go to shopdavidfeldman.com and hit the free transcripts button. These free transcripts are made possible by I want to put this politely. I want to be respectful to the people who shop at my store. Let's just call them pinheads, unwashed cretins who stupidly bought merch that is almost as worthless as they are. These filthy, filthy people with their filthy lucre buying filthy merch. You know, I'm going to assume whoever's buying this rancid garbage over at my store is plagued by guilt over how they made their money, and they want to get rid of it. I've lived in Vegas. If you add up all the times I've been in Vegas, there's a certain type of people who have to get rid of their money, so they gamble. And those are the people who shop at my store. They feel they have blood-stained hands, and they just want to get rid of their money. The people who are buying the garbage at shopdavidfeldman.com, these are pimps, gun runners, and human traffickers who look at their money and say, I did something really bad. I've committed way too many sins. I don't deserve this money. How do I get rid of it? And they go to shopdavidfeldman.com and buy my garbage, like this Rudy Giuliani mugshot coffee mug, or my Donald Trump mugshot coffee mug, or my Still a Democrat t-shirt, or my Still a Democrat coffee mug, or my Made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug. To those of you who bought this merch, who really aren't buying merch or just trying to get rid of their blood money, if I had the power to forgive you, I wouldn't. It's really between you and your maker, not between me and you and this store. But I will say this, and then I'm going to move on. And I'm not making this up. I spoke to Jesus, and he says, and this is Jesus talk, not me, okay? I'm just the messenger. Jesus says, if you do buy merch over at shopdavidfeldman.com, it will absolve some of you of some of your sins. Now, personally, I don't approve of indulgences. That's how the Vatican got built. But Jesus told me to tell you that if you buy merch over at Shop David Feldman, it won't guarantee an entrance into heaven. It will help. It will get you an introduction. This is what Jesus told me. Jesus says it all depends on how much merch you buy, and quite frankly, I find that tacky and offensive, and I think Jesus knows better. I'm a little disgusted by Jesus this morning that he would say this, but he's saying it's not easy to get into heaven these days, and it's no longer festival seating up in heaven. If you want to get close to the throne, Jesus says you got to buy merch from shopdavidfeldman.com. Again, I don't approve of this message. That's Jesus talking, not David Feldman. Joe Biden brought the cost of insulin down to $35 a month for people over the age of 65. Thanks to his investments, America's second biggest source of energy now comes from renewables. And despite what Trump lies, America, under Joe Biden, is energy independent. America produces more energy than we consume. Joe Biden created more jobs than any president in American history. Thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure bill, more money is being spent to repair our nation's infrastructure than at any time in American history. Every week was Infrastructure Week with Donald Trump, but he never passed an infrastructure bill. Joe Biden did. Thanks to the CHIPS Act, when it comes to making technology's next big leap with artificial intelligence, our supply chain is no longer subject to the whims of China. Joe Biden ended our more than 20-year war in Afghanistan, one of his finest moments. By temporarily expanding the child tax credit, Joe Biden temporarily lifted more children out of poverty than any president in American history, including LBJ. The Republicans, of course, let it lapse. Joe Biden canceled student loans for 5 million Americans And had the Supreme Court not intervened, Joe Biden would have been able to cancel student debt for millions and millions of more Americans. Had the Supreme Court not intervened, Joe Biden would have been able to expand and extend the eviction moratorium. Manufacturing jobs are back. Marijuana is about to become legal. The country is vaccinated. The economy is reopened. Americans are working, with wage growth finally outpacing inflation. And yet, according to some new polling, a majority of Americans say life was better under Trump. A majority of Americans, according to some polling, believe Trump, not Biden, is better equipped to face our nation's challenges. I refuse to go wobbly. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of Trump, and I hate cowards. I hate people who allow themselves to get worn down by con artists like Donald Trump, because we're right and they're wrong. And it's not just a sin to be a con artist. It's also a sin, in my book, to be stupid enough to be taken in by a con artist. The conversation we should be having right now should be, how do we get rid of Donald Trump? Not, what do we do about Joe Biden? That being said, I'd be lying if I said I'm just as optimistic as I was before last week's debate. I trust Joe Biden. I don't trust the Democratic Party. I need to see more polling, and new data will be coming in later tonight and tomorrow. I suspect it will show the debate didn't move the needle as far in Trump's direction as everybody fears. In fact, I'm positive. But I have to admit that I have been gobsmacked by consistent polling across the spectrum throughout the year that shows when it comes to Trump here in the United States, there is mass amnesia. And with that, a collective nostalgia for Trump's 4 years in the White House. As Joe Biden said after Trump claimed during the debate that water and air was cleaner when he was president, where have you been, man? Where have you been? Where have any of you been? What amazes me is even the Americans who plan on voting for Biden, many of them still insist life was better under Trump. Where have you been, man? They say the economy was better and they were safer. Where have you been? Well, the mists of time often serve as a diaphanous gauze that filters out all the imperfections of the past. How many of you suddenly find yourself longing for an abusive parent or boyfriend? Time creates a false memory. That's part of our resilience, to block out the horrors. Many of us, not me, but many of you are blocking out the horrors of Donald Trump's 4 abusive years in office. That doesn't mean Trump is going to win. He's not. It just means a lot of people are voting for Joe Biden, even though they mistakenly believe Trump did a better job. You have to be careful with how you read polls. Sometimes I get it wrong. Joe Biden's approval rating is hitting record lows, but he's still showing a higher approval rating than Donald Trump. And there are some bad actors in the media who will just give you half the story and tell you it's Joe Biden's numbers that are down. Yes, a majority of Americans, including Democrats, after Thursday's debate said Biden should quit the race. That's what some polls show, that something like 60% of Democrats said Biden should quit the race. But that doesn't mean, given a choice between Biden and Trump, that they're voting for Trump. It just means right now they would like Joe Biden to quit the race. A vast majority of Americans are unhappy with both candidates. So even though a majority right now says Joe Biden should quit, the same majority also says Donald Trump should quit. And that same majority who thinks Joe Biden should quit, most of them, given that this is what's being served, they're going to vote for Joe Biden. Look, the only polling that matters is Biden or Trump. More precisely, Biden or Trump in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Since the debate, Biden's seen some deterioration in those three states, a little deterioration. But we could be talking about fewer than 100,000 votes in three states. Hillary lost Wisconsin. Now, a lot of you know this, but you tell me, you pretend you're Joe Biden looking at the polling that's coming in tonight, tomorrow, and over the weekend, polling that's coming in from Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, okay? We're talking about 100,000 votes. Hillary lost Wisconsin by a little more than 20,000 votes in 2016. She lost Pennsylvania by a little more than 40,000 votes. She lost Michigan by 11,000 votes. Are any of you prepared to look at polling in those states right now and tell me Joe Biden is going to lose? I'm not. Is it going to be tight? It may be, but they have record unemployment right now in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. He's not going to lose. Joe, despite last Thursday, is incredibly competitive in those three states. And most importantly, Labor Day is 2 months away. The general election doesn't begin until after Labor Day. This election cycle is an anomaly. We have the longest general election in American history. We knew who both parties had nominated by March 1st. So we are stretching out the general election much longer than it's ever been stretched out before. This debate was a blip. I know Biden will win Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. I think it could be hard, but he's going to win, and he's not quitting. He's not going to quit. I don't think. Now, there is no denying that polling over the past 4 months shows that way too many Americans don't remember Trump, don't see Trump the way you and I do. And yes, a new New York Times Siena poll, which is a legitimate poll, a new New York Times Siena poll shows Donald Trump jumping ahead of Joe Biden this week after the debate. If the election were held today, Trump would win by, according to this poll, by 6 percentage points, well outside the margin of error. That's one poll. There's a CNN and a Wall Street Journal poll also showing, after the debate, Trump leading by 6 points nationally. Now, those debate numbers will settle. They will revert back to the polling we saw before the debate, which showed a dead heat. way too close to call. Nate Cohen, writing in the New York Times, says historically, whoever is perceived as the winner of the first presidential debate always gets a 3-point bump in the polls. But then other factors determine the trajectory of the race. He says debates have pretty much no effect on the results of a presidential election. He said if you go back 7 presidential elections, the perceived winner of the first debate always goes up 3 points in the polls, and then sometimes, depending on what happens, that lead fades, sometimes it stays. It all depends. Remember Obama's disastrous first debate with Romney in 2012? Romney got a 3% bump in the polls. He lost in the election. Before the debate, remember that? How long ago that was? Biden was on an upswing. Now he's on a downswing. These polls fluctuate. But that being said, there is some reporting that Joe Biden is beginning to be affected by the negativity, or at least he's pretending to be affected by the negativity. Yesterday, he made it apparent that he is beginning to believe this is a grave situation. As recently as Tuesday, he was joking with donors in Virginia and saying, quote, "I fell asleep during the debate." But by Wednesday morning, he began fielding calls from donors and high-ranking party officials who told him he has days, if not hours, to get in front of this. And this is where being 81 has its advantages. He's acting concerned. But an 81-year-old who's been in Washington for more than 50 years, remember, he was elected to the Senate, what was he, 28? He knows exactly what he's doing. This is baseball, and we're not even in the playoffs. It's not even Labor Day. It's 2 months until Labor Day. As I've been telling my sister, my loved ones, my listeners, and my friends, calm the F down. We are hearing that Joe is planning on something big to show voters he's up for the job. There's an interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos that will be scheduled for tomorrow night. It's recorded, and from what I've heard, it's just a 15-minute interview. The interview is important, but I'm voting for Joe Biden no matter what. If he just gurgles drool for 15 minutes, I'm voting for him. And I suspect most of the people who were going to vote for him before the debate are going to vote for him no matter what. Now, if he turns in a poor performance with George Stephanopoulos, similar to last week's debate, I can't pretend that the panic won't get worse. I won't pretend that I'm not concerned. But I will tell you this, I doubt it will affect the polls. Most people won't be watching George Stephanopoulos Friday night. The same way most people didn't watch the debate. It was fewer than 50 million. They will hear about it, but most people don't care. Not yet. Labor Day is 2 months away. There's a hot dog eating contest at Coney Island later today. That's way more important to most Americans. And even if they do care, and even if they did watch the debate, even if they watch George Stephanopoulos tomorrow night and they become convinced that Joe is sundowning, how many voters, given the choice between fascism and a doddering old man, are going to choose fascism? Yeah, well, Joe was a little slow on the uptake, so I guess I have to go with the Nazi. The choice couldn't be starker. It couldn't be clearer. People aren't going to go with the Nazi because Joe Biden lost a step. I do not want him to step aside. I am rooting for Joe. I am emotionally invested in Joe Biden. I wasn't in 2020. I am now. I want him to do well at the next debate. I want him to do well with George Stephanopoulos. I want him to come back, and I know he will. I think a lot of us will be overly enthusiastic by how well he was with George Stephanopoulos. I got a lot to talk about. I suspect things will be very quiet today, which is July 4th, and I think things will be quiet tomorrow. I suspect nothing comes out of the White House for a few days. But let me catastrophize. If it's going to break against Joe, it's going to break really fast. If he's going to go a lot sooner than any of us think. I suspect, and I'm usually wrong, by Monday we'll have a rough idea as to whether he's going to stay on the ticket. He's staying on the ticket. He's not leaving. He's made it clear. And there are really no mechanisms in place to kick him off the ticket. This is his party. He's the nominee. It's really hard to get rid of a nominee. I mean, it can be done, but if he thinks he's going to win this, he's not leaving. Late Wednesday night, as you all know, Biden met with 20 Democratic governors in the Roosevelt Room of the White House. So far, nothing negative has leaked from that meeting, but this is early morning. There'll be some leaks later today, and they won't be good leaks. During the meeting, Biden said he got a medical checkup right after the debate. He had a cold. He received a clean bill of health, but he didn't get a full checkup. The Democratic governors of Maine and New Mexico during yesterday's meeting told Joe Biden that they were worried that he can't win their two reliably blue states. Maine is not a winner-take-all state, so when I show the map, it's got a vast rural area, and they always spit out one red elector. But a majority of Maine's votes are traditionally blue. 3 of the governors in attendance at yesterday's meeting in the White House, 3 of the governors who were in the White House or showed up on Zoom, some of the Democrats showed up on Zoom. 3 of them were California Governor Gavin Newsom, Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and Kentucky's Governor Andy Beshear, all 3 of whom have been named as possible replacements at the top of the ticket for Joe Biden. I will get to Vice President Harris again in a second. It's going to be Vice President Harris if he goes, as I said at the top of the show, whether you like it or not. She's not my first choice. She and Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg were at the bottom of the list in 2020 who I wanted to vote for. At this point, I accept with 4 months, God forbid Joe has to step aside. I think the answer is Vice President Harris topping the ticket, and I'm choking up a little saying this, Pete Buttigieg as the vice president. We're not going to get Elizabeth Warren, Bernie, Sheldon Whitehouse, Cori Bush, AOC. I doubt we'll even, I think Gavin Newsom is a really strong candidate. I've watched him on Fox News, but he didn't do so well when he debated Ron DeSantis on Fox News. And he was married to Kimberly Gargoyle. So who knows what she has on him. You know, he has not, he did win the recall in California, but running for president, you have to be thoroughly vetted. Vice President Harris has been thoroughly vetted. She's the vice president. He's not going to leave the ticket, but if he does, there might be thunder and lightning that's very, very frightening. But in the end, the same way it was Hubert Humphrey in the end in 1968, when that was an open convention, it's going to be Vice President Harris, whether you like it or not. But Joe Biden isn't leaving. He's not going anywhere. Anyway, back to the meeting with the governors in the Roosevelt Room of the White House yesterday. The three governors who spoke at the end of the meeting, who went out front, there were 20 Democratic governors, 17 governors didn't speak after the meeting. We will hear their version of the meeting with Biden later today, as that all starts to leak later this morning. I'm positive we will hear that some of those 17 governors, the ones who didn't talk after the meeting, we will hear that they didn't like what they saw, that they're still concerned about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. But coming out of the White House, Democratic governors, there were three Democratic governors who spoke. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota told reporters that he has no doubt that Joe Biden is fit for a second term. But he also admitted the debate performance was a disaster. And he parsed his words. If you go back and watch what he was saying, he was confident in his support for Joe Biden, but there was a hint that he wasn't so confident about Joe's cognitive ability. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York told reporters that all the governors agreed during the meeting that they are standing with Joe and that he's going to win it in November. Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, he was the third governor to speak. He said Biden was honest during the meeting. He said Democrats are focusing on the win in November. He acknowledged that Biden has fallen behind in the polling and that there is concern that because of the debate, he might lose. So that suggests that they're looking, Biden and the Democrats are looking at polling that we don't get to see. And the polling that they're looking at isn't Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. I'll get to this later. They're looking at House Democrats who are worried that Joe is going to drag them down and they're going to lose the House. I'll get to that in a second. That's when they say the polling is bad, they're worried about purple districts that will go red in November. The three governors stressed party unity and loyalty and insisted that Joe Biden is in it to win it. The takeaway from the official statements from those three governors in front of the White House is Biden told them during the meeting, I'm not quitting. That's the takeaway. He basically said it's not subject to debate. You have no choice. I'm not quitting. I'm the party nominee. I'm not going anywhere. And what we seem to be getting from the governor's meeting is how much Joe wants to stay in the race, not how much the governors want him to stay in the race, and especially not how much the governors were convinced he's up to the job. Like I said, more will leak later today. And I suspect one of those governors will be leaking that they didn't like what they saw, that Joe seemed out of it. And that is going to be a serious problem that we'll have to ignore. Pay attention to what gets leaked out of that governor's meeting, because what we're not hearing as of yet after that meeting is a full-throated endorsement of Joe Biden's cognitive ability. And I can't pretend that isn't slightly troublesome. Again, there are 17 governors who chose not to speak to the press right after the meeting. Some of those governors attended the meeting via Zoom. I am hopeful that we won't get leaks that say some of the governors were concerned. I'm hoping that's not going to happen. But be prepared for that to be leaked. You might remember that Gretchen Whitmer supposedly said after the debate, she's the governor of Michigan, she supposedly said, well, thanks to that debate, we just lost Michigan. And she said, I never said that. So be prepared for fake leaks to come out. It doesn't matter. Biden is not quitting. Joe Biden conducted an all-hands-on-deck phone call with the White House staff Wednesday morning, and he assured everyone not going anywhere. But those who were in on the call later said it sounded scripted. Biden reportedly told staffers, quote, let me say this as clearly as I possibly can, as simply and straightforward as I can. I am running. No one's pushing me out. I'm not leaving. I'm in this race to the end, and we're going to win. You all received emails from Joe Biden last night asking for money while reassuring us that no matter what you've heard, I'm on the ticket. White House press spokesperson Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said emphatically that President Biden is not suffering from Alzheimer's. She blamed his poor debate performance on a bad cold. She went on to say that Joe Biden has done 40 unscripted interviews this year and is planning to conduct what she called a big boy press conference next week at the NATO conference. She also hyped Biden's much-anticipated interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos that airs tomorrow night, prime time, recorded, not live. It is up to Joe Biden. And all that matters is what the internal polls are telling him. He is looking at polls tonight, tomorrow, and over the weekend. He's looking at polls in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. He's looking at how much money they have for their get out the vote machine in those 3 states and what the ad buys are. And if he sees cratering in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, he'll get out. But like I said, 2016, 100,000 votes. Those 3 states came down to 100,000 votes. Can anyone look at the polling on a granular level right now and say Trump is going to win those states? No. But the Boston Globe is now out with an editorial calling on Joe Biden to leave the ticket. This on the heels of the New York Times, The Economist, The New Yorker, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution immediately after last Thursday's debate, calling for him to step aside. Must be great being so confident in your predictive abilities to watch one debate and know that Joe Biden has to step aside. The Biden campaign told House Democrats early Wednesday morning, not going anywhere, staying put. The Biden campaign announced yesterday they've hit a record number of campaign contributions. And since that debate, Biden is now outraising Donald Trump. Biden raked in $127 million in June. Trump raised $112 million in June. That's really important. Not as important as the polling, but it's important because Trump outraised Biden in May. That was while the Manhattan trial was going on. And that trial turned out to be a cash cow for Donald Trump. Trump was found guilty on May 30th. He had a much better May than Joe Biden, but Biden had a better June. The Biden campaign told House Democrats to ignore the new New York Times poll that shows considerable erosion for him. The Biden camp says their internal polling shows otherwise. They said that the New York Times Siena poll is, quote, an outlier. Politico reports that Biden has spoken privately with Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, and Chuck Schumer, the Senate majority leader in the Senate. Some are saying Biden waited too long after the debate to contact them. He reportedly waited too long to speak with other members of the senior Democratic leadership in both the House and the Senate. All that matters is what the polls are telling Joe Biden. But cracks in the Biden wall are too large to ignore. Adam Frisch is the Democrat running for Colorado's 3rd congressional district. He lost to Lauren Boebert in 2022 by about 500 votes. She switched districts, and it looks like he's probably, maybe, going to win Colorado's 3rd. Yesterday, he wrote a piece in the Washington Post calling on Joe Biden to step aside. Pennsylvania House Democrat Summer Lee said yesterday that Biden needs to prove to her that he can beat Trump. She said she would be fine with Vice President Harris topping the ticket instead of Joe Biden. I'll get to Vice President Harris in a second. Massachusetts House Democrat Seth Moulton issued a statement late last night saying he had grave concerns about Joe Biden's ability to beat Trump. Notice these are congressional candidates. I'll explain to you what's going on in the Senate momentarily, but the House Democrats are the ones who are panicking. Seth Moulton praised Biden, but warned that he's not sure the president has the strength to, quote, prosecute the case against Donald Trump. Moulton added, quote, when your current strategy isn't working, it's rarely the right decision to double down. Not so sure about that. Not so sure. That sounds smart, but it's not. Texas House Democrat Lloyd Doggett became the first member of the House to call on Joe Biden to step aside. Then on Wednesday, Arizona House Democrat Raul Grijalva became the second to call for Biden to be replaced. Grijalva, former chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, told the New York Times, I will support Joe Biden if he decides to stay in the race. But he added, Joe should step aside. Politico reports this morning that both House Democrat Jared Golden of Maine, a blue dog, he's been on this show, and Marie Gluesenkamp Perez of Washington, the two of them told reporters on Tuesday that they believed Biden will lose if he remains in the race. They're not calling for him to step aside. They're saying they believe Biden will lose if he remains in the House. No, they believe they will lose if he remains in the race. He may, Jared Golden is in a purple district in Maine. He may lose if Joe Biden stays in the race. Joe Biden isn't going to lose. Behind the scenes, there is some report that practically every House Democrat is privately saying Biden should step aside. He's not having this problem in the Senate. I'll explain why in a second. Biden owes his presidency in some part to South Carolina House Democrat James Clyburn, who, as you all know, back in 2020 was the third-ranking Democrat in the House. It was Clyburn who turned things around for Joe by helping him win the South Carolina primary. That was Biden's. He did badly in Iowa and New Hampshire, and he was on the ropes. Clyburn, Obama went down to South Carolina. They convinced Pete Buttigieg, who had more delegates than Biden, to drop out for Super Tuesday after South Carolina. So the fix was in for Joe Biden in 2020, thanks to James Clyburn. Clyburn is now saying, however, and he said this more than once, that he would support Vice President Harris if Joe Biden decides to drop out. He has said this week several times. He's also, as I said at the top of the show, calling for a mini primary before the convention. I don't know what he's thinking. There cannot be a mini primary. There cannot be an open convention. You cannot trust this Democratic Party to get behind a winner of an open convention or a mini primary. If he's going to go, he's got to resign the presidency as well. Vice President Harris becomes president, and then she wins because she's running for re-election against Donald Trump. You know, call the Republicans' bluff. Chip Roy is introducing a resolution invoking the 25th Amendment. That turd, Speaker Mike Johnson, after the debate, said we should invoke the 25th Amendment. If it gets to that point, it's not going to happen. But if Joe has to leave the ticket, then he's got to leave the Oval Office, and Trump loses. President Harris will defeat Donald Trump running on Joe Biden's record, and Joe Biden will go down in history as one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. If, God forbid, that has to happen. But I don't want to hear talk of an open convention or a mini primary. Clyburn, the fact that he's repeatedly saying he would support Vice President Harris is major news. And what's also major news is what Clyburn isn't saying. He's not saying, when asked about Joe Biden dropping out, he's not saying, I refuse to dignify that question. The fact that he's answering this question says a lot. And this is the problem with the Democrats. This is why Joe Biden cannot step down. They will cannibalize the party. You have to force Vice President Harris on them by making her president. Before the debate, the panic is in the House. Before the debate, it was received wisdom that the Democrats would win back the House, maybe lose the Senate. And so after the debate, you have House Democrats in panic mode because a lot of them fear they won't be coming back to Washington if Trump wins big and Biden drags the House down with them. The pushback is immense within the House. Now, we know House Democrats are in panic mode. Biden just needs to win Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, but that means nothing to them. House Democrats aren't talking about polling that they're seeing in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. They're talking about polling in their own districts, and it may not be looking that great for them. So if you're a Democrat in a purple district in upstate New York or Orange County, California, what do you care that all Biden needs is Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania? On the other hand, if you go to the upper house, the Democrats running for the Senate are not in panic mode. The Democrats running for the Senate, Jackie Rosen in Nevada, Gallego in Arizona, Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin, Sherrod Brown in Ohio, Casey in Pennsylvania, they're singing a different song from the House Democrats. Even Tester in Montana is doing okay. As I've said on the show, they're going to be the ones who lift Joe Biden up. It's the House where the panic has set in. Okay, let's talk about Joe's apparent cognitive decline. There's no question that he's not the same as he was 4 years ago. So what? I've explained on the show I did 2 nights ago. It doesn't matter. But let's talk about it. The New York Times reported yesterday that Biden has appeared disoriented. That they say he's been disoriented this year more often than his handlers are willing to admit. He is also reportedly angrier than he's been in the past, and he is prone to snapping at underlings. He's always had a bad temper, but now reportedly people are walking on eggshells around him. This is the same kind of reporting that comes out of every White House. The Times said he seemed confused on June 6th during an appearance in France commemorating D-Day. I'm not talking about the video of the parachutist that was edited deceptively. There are reports that he seemed to other world leaders a little out of it. The next day, they are really nitpicking here. The next day he misspoke when he described where some of America's military aid to Ukraine was being delivered. You tell me if this is a major flub. I don't think it is. He said some of the military aid was going to reconstruct Ukraine's electrical grid. Turns out it's not. Turns out he got that wrong. Is that senility, or is that just so much information in one man's head? He's got a lot of information in his head. Does it matter that he misspoke on saying the money's going to the electrical grid in Ukraine and it's not? How many lies did Donald Trump tell about Ukraine during the debate? The Times said that Joe appeared disoriented during a June 10th celebration of Juneteenth. This is the video. He was standing next to his vice president and other dignitaries who were dancing up a storm. And Biden did exactly what David Feldman would have done. He just watched. He didn't dance like everybody else. So some say he seemed disoriented. He doesn't look disoriented to me. Doug Emhoff, the vice president's husband, tried to dance. And if we're looking at Doug Emhoff trying to dance right now, if you saw Doug Emhoff trying to dance, you'd know why Biden said, I'm going to sit this one out. Doug Emhoff is the one who seemed disoriented. I'm disoriented watching Doug Emhoff try to dance. On June 18th, Biden reportedly struggled to remember the name of his director of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, but pulled it out at the last minute and remembered his name. People forget names. Dr. Kevin C. O'Connor, the White House physician, said back in February that Biden is fit for duty. He also denied rumors that Biden is in the early stages of Parkinson's disease. But the New York Times reports Dr. O'Connor will not answer the newspaper's follow-up questions, and the Oval Office has not allowed him to speak with the press. Is replacing Joe Biden going to be the solution to what is a non-existent problem? A new CNN poll shows in a hypothetical matchup, Trump beats Vice President Harris by 2 points, while Trump beats Biden by 6 points. That's a post-debate poll. Where do I stand? I think you know. I'm human. I can't lie and say everything is great. I'm concerned. On the last show, I said let's wait till August 1st, see where the polls are. I think I might have been a little naive. I think it's sooner than August 1st. I'm not sure, logistically speaking, we can wait that long. The Democratic convention begins August 19th. One thing to remember, Trump wants Biden on the ballot. He thinks he can beat Biden. And if Biden drops out, logistically speaking, Trump will spend millions keeping Trump's successor's name off the ballot. So he will do everything he can to say Vice President Harris can't be on the ballot because they passed the deadline. Another reason, if he's going to leave the ticket, he has to make her president. Steve Bannon, on his way to prison, said the worst thing to happen to the Trump campaign would be if Biden is replaced. That's why Biden's debate performance created a crisis in the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign is in a mini crisis mode. There are reports that Trump had already picked his running mate, but is now having second thoughts after last Thursday's debate. Because if Biden is off the ticket, Trump will have to adjust accordingly. At least so goes some of the reporting. And by the way, this is really important. Whoever Trump picks as his running mate is going to be a disaster. Unless it's Marco Rubio. Rubio is the smartest pick. He's sharp, he knows policy, and he will placate a considerable share of the old guard Republicans and Wall Street. You know, Wall Street is behind Joe Biden. They are not happy. The bond market has panicked because of the debate. They fear that Trump is going to run up record deficits and interest rates are going to skyrocket. Bond market did not respond well to the thought of Donald Trump becoming president. Wall Street doesn't like him. The CEOs don't like him. Rubio is a good pick. The only good choice Trump has. Every other pick, no matter who it is, will be a disaster and will once again remind voters of how irresponsible Donald Trump is. Assuming Joe Biden stays in the race, it's a safe bet that if Trump picks someone other than Rubio, that decision, whoever he picks, that decision will do to Trump in the polls what last Thursday's debate did to Joe Biden. He will lose 3 percentage points. The Republican debate, the Republican convention is July 15th. So he's going to make the announcement on July 15th or 16th, unless it's Rubio. And I don't see how Trump's ego could handle Rubio as vice president. Trump's polling will take at least a 3% nosedive after he announces his number 2. As I just said, the Republicans meet in Milwaukee for their convention the week after next. It's 1 week from this Monday. There are a lot of things that are going to go wrong for Donald Trump in the next 10 days. They always do. He will botch the number 2 pick. He will deliver an acceptance speech at the convention similar to the one he's been delivering out on the campaign trail. A speech where he's now calling Biden and Schumer Palestinians, where he goes off script and is incoherent. He will deliver a speech simultaneously incoherent, and when he's coherent, that speech will outline his chilling vision for America. Conventions aren't as important as they once were. That being said, a lot of people think Clinton got elected in 1992 because Pat Buchanan's speech at the Republican convention renominating George Herbert Walker Bush. A lot of people think Pat Buchanan's speech revealed a racist strain in the Republican Party that frightened too many Americans. Well, the speakers at this Republican convention are going to make Pat Buchanan sound like Susan Sarandon. It will have more than just the whiff of a Klan meeting. That convention will have everything except the robes and the burning crosses. If you think the pundit class is wetting their bed after Joe's debate debacle, just wait till they hear what the Republicans have planned for us in 2025. They are going to outline their vision at the convention. Very few Americans will be paying attention, but the pundit class will be, and they are going to be terrified. Donald Trump is only good at painting America as a failed state. And that's why he was able to win. He really didn't win in 2016, but that's how he won in 2016. At least he won the Electoral College. But in 2020, he lost because he couldn't run against America. He was in charge of it. So he had to defend a disastrous 4-year record. At the same time, he had to tell American voters what his vision of the future is. He doesn't have a vision for the future. That's why he lost in 2020. In the end, in 2024, he can't get away with simply saying to the American people what he said in 2016. He can't say Democratic leadership is a disaster and only I can fix it. He can't say, like he did to the black voter in 2016, what do you got to lose? We know what we've got to lose. He has to show his vision for the next 4 years. He has no vision. He offers no future other than vengeance. And by Election Day, the American people will finally remember that. Trump amnesia and Trump nostalgia notwithstanding, come Labor Day, when most Americans start paying attention, they go, oh, right, COVID. His speech at the convention will be dark, apocalyptic, and gloomy. He will describe a non-existent America where crime and inflation are up and jobs are down, when the truth is crime and inflation are down and jobs are up. Right now, the American people, according to most of the polling, the American people don't know how good things are. By Labor Day, they will be reminded of how bad things can get. When they start listening to Donald Trump, they're going to go, oh, right. People aren't paying attention. Labor Day is 2 months away. The question is how much time Joe and the Democrats have if they're going to replace Joe. They're not going to. Again, the problem is logistics. Do you really think this Democratic Party is capable of Joe Biden stepping aside and they throw open the convention and allow the delegates to decide to hold a mini primary? And then we're going to get the new nominee on the ballot in all 50 states in enough time? Trump and the Republicans don't want Biden off the ticket. They already have plans in place for legal challenges in key battleground states to keep Biden's name on the ballot. 2 months ago, they were trying to keep Biden's name off the Ohio ballot. Now, they're trying to keep it on. So, logistically speaking, and this is why Joe is staying put, we don't have until August 1st to see whether the polls have cratered. And this Democratic Party is not equipped to hold an open convention where Joe Biden releases his delegates and the nearly 4,000 delegates in Chicago, pick the best candidate. Those 4,000 delegates who are going to come to Chicago in August are party hacks. They will do what they are told. And they're going to be told to pick Vice President Harris. There will be, if you do the open convention garbage, you will create the illusion that the delegates actually had a say. Not this party, no. Not with the superdelegates who get to vote after the first ballot or if Joe Biden steps away. If you lie to the Democrats and say it's going to be an open convention and then the fix is in and Vice President Harris gets the nomination, the same way Hubert Humphrey got it in Chicago in '68, Democrats are going to leave Chicago with a really bad taste in their mouth, and they will, some of them won't vote for Harris. She will look like a product of the back room, which she is. And at this point, if you're going to go through with this, you better get a product from the back room. Harry Truman was a product of the smoke-filled room. He was the right president at the right time, according to most people. I don't want to get into it. You're going to need the smoke-filled back room, the donor class. It's going to be the vice president. That's it. Anything short of Harris at the top of the ticket is going to be a disaster. And if it's an open convention or a mini primary, that will create so much division. You have to force, there's no choice. I'm stepping down. I'm no longer president. We're nominating President Harris. That's the only way this is going to work, which is why Joe Biden is staying put. I don't want him to go. If you topple the king, you got to topple the king. And I don't think we're going to do that. I think if he's drooling with George Stephanopoulos and calls George Stephanopoulos George Hoffanopoulos, we're still going to be stuck with Joe. It's not the worst thing. And Suck it up. Suck it up. The Republicans are getting behind a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, a twice impeached former president who killed 1 million Americans by crapping the bed on COVID. They're willing to see through all of that. Joe's gotten a little old. Haven't we all? I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Big election in Great Britain today. Looks like Labour is going to win big. Not the Labour Party. It used to be. I'm going to try to do a show Friday. I have a lot more to say on this and the Supreme Court ruling and the elections in France and the elections in England. Look at this picture of Joe Biden. Again, I wanted Bernie. I just want to go big here. You got to have faith. You got to have faith. He's not a perfect man, but he's a good man. And we're stuck with him. Thank you to everybody in the chat room. If you're nervous about the election, get to work. Get to work. Get to work. Please like this episode. Don't forget to go to shopdavidfeldman.com for some free transcripts and pick up the Rudy Giuliani coffee mug, the Donald Trump mugshot coffee mug, Still a Democrat t-shirt, Still a Democrat mugshot. Thank you to Bob in the chat room. Thank you, everybody. To those of you who live in America, happy July 4th.